Welcome. Tonight, we will take a long, quiet walk through a part of history often shrouded in myth and glory. You may have heard the word samurai and thought of honor, sharp blades, and grand battles beneath fluttering banners. But tonight, we'll not linger in the legends. Tonight, we will explore the slower, more forgotten rhythms of life in feudal Japan. The quiet trudging of foot soldiers, the careful calculations of a warlord, the hidden and unspectacular work of spies, and the muted luxury of those at the very top. This is a journey into the parts of history where glory fades, where daily life was shaped not by grand victories, but by cold rice, aching feet, and endless waiting. So, allow your body to relax. Allow your mind to drift, gently following the worn path of those who came before you. And let's begin with the life of the ashigaru, the humble foot soldier. A life that, despite its place in legend, was often marked by hunger, exhaustion, and quiet suffering. Imagine yourself waking before the sun, your body stiff from sleeping on a thin straw mat. The air is cold, heavy with the faint scent of damp wood and old tatami. Your hands are rough, your feet calloused and sore. You are an ashigaru, foot soldier in the service of a samurai lord. But to him, you are just one of many. A small figure in a sea of brown and gray. You do not wear shining armor. Your breastplate, if you are fortunate enough to have one, is a patchwork of thin metal plates tied together with fraying cords. Your helmet is simple, sometimes no more than lacquered iron bound with thin strips of leather. And your weapon, perhaps a long wooden spear, perhaps a rusted sword passed down from another man who did not live long enough to need it. Your life moves to the rhythm of marching feet. The days are long. You walk through muddy roads, over rough hills, straw sandals quickly falling apart, leaving your feet bare against the stones. You carry your armor, your weapon, your food if there is any to carry. Often, your meals are sparse. Cold rice, perhaps a few pickled vegetables, hard and sour against your tongue. Sometimes, the food runs out altogether. In those times, you chew on grass or bark, or simply endure the hollow ache in your stomach. When battles come, you do not ride at the front. You do not face your enemy as a named warrior. You are part of the wall of men's spear points, bristling, feet sinking into soft earth, hands trembling, not from fear, but from exhaustion. If you fall, few will notice. If you survive, you may simply be told to keep marching. The sounds around you are constant. The clatter of armor, the low murmuring of other foot soldiers, the barked orders that ripple like distant thunder, and always the waiting. Waiting to move, waiting to fight, waiting to die. You are not a figure of legend. You are a man who walks, a man who waits, a man who hopes to see us home again, though, you know, quietly, that you may not. When the fighting ends, there is no glory feast for you. There is no name written in the chronicles. You return to the camp, remove your worn sandals, and sleep again on a mat that feels thinner each night. The rhythm of your life is simple. Walk, wait, fight, wait, sleep. Perhaps you once imagined a life of honor. Perhaps you dreamed of earning a place among the samurai. But now, you simply dream of rest. And as the wind rustles the fabric of the war banners overhead, you wonder if anyone will remember your name when you are gone. Your life in this long, grinding war is but one of thousands. Moving forward, always forward, toward battles you did not choose and futures you may never see. The life of the ashigaru was not one of shining blades and noble duels. It was a life of dust, a life of hunger, a life of waiting. And yet, it was a life that built the foundations of great wars, great lords, and great stories. A quiet life, a hard life, a forgotten life. But you are not forgotten now. Now, as we walk quietly together through these distant days, your story lingers, soft as the footsteps of a soldier in the morning mist. Imagine now that you are standing in the grand hall of a provincial castle. The floorboards creaked softly beneath your feet, polished smooth by countless sandals. The air is cool, tinged with the faint scent of burning incense and damp stone. Before you stands a man, Oda Nobunaga. Not yet the legend, not yet the unifier, but even now, something lingers about him, a presence, sharp and unrelenting, like a blade that never rests in its sheath. In a time when Japan was torn into countless pieces, small, squabbling domains ruled by warlords clinging to power, Nobunaga was different. While others built high walls, Nobunaga built roads. While others guarded their castles, he looked beyond them. He was young, brash, and famously careless in his early years. They called him the Fool of Owari. His clothes were loose, his manner unrefined, his speech too free for those who expected the stiff elegance of samurai nobility. But Nobunaga was no fool. Behind his strange ways was a mind forever moving, measuring, calculating, stepping always 2 paces ahead. In the quiet chambers of his castle, he listened carefully to the movements of other lords. He knew that to unite Japan, he would need not just swords, but new ways of thinking. His armies marched with strange weapons, firearms, newly brought from Portuguese traders, while others clung to the old ways. Nobunaga embraced the musket's sharp crack, its smoke curling lazily above the battlefield. And in this, his forces found an edge. His rise was swift, yet never without struggle. There were castles to storm, alliances to shatter, betrayals to endure. But Nobunaga was patient, and when he struck with precision. One of his most famous victories came at the Battle of Okayazama. Outnumbered, outmatched, expected to fall, but with the clever use of terrain, surprise, and daring, Nobunaga's forces overwhelmed his rival in a sudden, thunderous attack. The man once mocked as a fool now stood tall among the most feared leaders in Japan. But victory, as always, was followed by more marching, more battles, more waiting. Keida's ambition was not simply to rule. It was to break the centuries-old structure that had bound Japan in endless cycles of war. He dismantled old temples that held too much power. He tore through those who would resist him, moving always toward a single goal: unification. And yet, in the end, it was not an army that stopped him. It was betrayal. One of his own generals, Akechi Mitsuhide, turned against him. The details are forever soaked in quiet speculation. What words were spoken? What loyalties were broken? One morning, Nobunaga sought rest at the Hanoji Temple in Kyoto. There, in the cool, shadowed halls, he expected peace. But Mitsuhide's forces surrounded the temple, cutting off escape. Trapped, outnumbered, Nobunaga met his end in the flames that soon consumed the wooden walls around him. His body was never found. Even in death, he left behind only questions, ashes, and a legacy unfinished. But his vision did not perish with him. Others would pick up the sword where he fell. Japan would, in time, be unified, though Nobunaga would not see it. His story, though grand, is quiet in its deeper rhythm. A man who marched endlessly toward a goal, yet found that ambition often walks hand in hand with danger. Now, as the embers of Hanagi fade, let us gently turn our attention to another hidden path. Not the path of the foot soldier, not the road of the great lord, but the shadowed lanes of the spy, the quiet, careful steps of the ninja. Their stories, too, are wrapped in legend. But what was their life really like? When you hear the word ninja, your mind may conjure images of silent assassins, black-clad figures leaping across rooftops, throwing stars, glinting in the moonlight, quick, deadly, untouchable. But the real lives of those who practiced ninjutsu were far less spectacular and far more ordinary. Imagine now that you are walking through the narrow streets of a quiet village. The air is cool, the faint scent of miso soup drifting from open windows. The ground beneath your sandals is packed dirt, soft and worn from countless passing feet. Here, among farmers, potters, and traveling merchants, lives the ninja. But no one calls him that here. He is, perhaps, a humble courier, perhaps a gardener, perhaps simply a neighbor who greets you with a polite bow and quiet words. For the ninja's greatest weapon was not the sword, or the throwing star, or even poison. It was invisibility through familiarity, to be unseen by being unremarkable. Much of a ninja's life was spent gathering information, listening carefully to the casual conversations of traveling monks, merchants, and soldiers, canting into temples, markets, or camps, taking slow, steady mental notes. The ninja's work, though dangerous, was often tedious, following supply lines, observing enemy movements, carrying messages across long distances through mountain paths and river crossings, always under threat of capture. There were times, yes, when the ninja was sent to infiltrate a castle. But these missions were not often grand feats of swordplay. More commonly, they were quiet tasks, setting a fire in a storage building, opening a small side gate in the dead of night, placing false documents in the right hands. And when there was combat, it was not a graceful duel. It was fast, desperate, over in moments. As much of the ninja skill lay in escape, not in confrontation. Their tools were simple: short sword, often used more for climbing than for fighting; a grappling hook, not to swing between rooftops, but to scale garden walls; small iron caltrops scattered on the ground to slow pursuers. Even their famed black clothing was largely a myth born of later stories and theater. In reality, they wore whatever best matched their surrounding farmers' robes, monks' garb, simple travelers' clothes. The life of a ninja was not one of glory. It was one of patience, of silence, of waiting. And like the ashigaru, many ninja died unnamed, their work unnoticed, their contributions absorbed into the quiet machinery of war and politics. Sometimes their own employers betrayed them, discarding them when their usefulness ended, for trust was always scarce in the shadows. But the ninja endured, quietly shaping the flow of battles, the rise and fall of lords, the subtle redirection of power. And when their work was finished, they would walk away as they came, unseen, unnoticed, anonymous. As you follow their footsteps now, through the winding paths of villages and forests, you might begin to sense the steady repetition that filled their days. Not the fierce, flashing danger of legend, but the calm, quiet, and careful rhythm of a life spent listening, watching, and walking away. A life where the most dangerous thing was not to be seen. Now, as the soft echo of those careful steps fades, let us turn toward a different path. Not the mud-soaked trails of soldiers, not the grand flame-lit halls of warlords, not the secret lanes of spies, but the hushed corridors of the shogunate's court, where life moved slowly, with precision, with layers of silk and silence. Let us now drift into the velvet quiet of the Tokugawa elite. Now, let us leave behind the dusty roads, the secret paths, the clash of armies, and the silent footfalls of the ninja. But let us step softly into another world, the world of the Tokugawa elite, the shogunate's chosen few. Imagine yourself gliding through the polished wooden corridors of an Edo palace. The floors gleam beneath your feet, so carefully tended that your reflection shimmers faintly in their surface. Attire, the scent of freshly cut cedar, mingles with the faint aroma of incense that drifts lazily through the air, curling like the quiet pace of time itself. Outside, in the palace gardens, stone lanterns rest among carefully raked gravel. Not a single pebble out of place. The stillness is complete, save for the soft rustle of silk as the noble families move about their slow and scripted days. For life among the Tokugawa elite was not fast, was not dangerous, it was not thrilling, it was precise, restrained, exquisitely ordered. Your days, as a member of this rarefied circle, are filled with a steady rhythm of obligation. hours spent perfecting the art of formal greetings. The bow must be just deep enough, not too shallow. Your words must flow with exacting courtesy, carefully avoiding any phrase that might cause discomfort or suggest undue familiarity. Even your clothing speaks in volumes of unspoken language. Layers of silk, chosen not for comfort, but to signal status, season, and propriety. The weight of the robes settles upon you like the gentle press of centuries of tradition. Tea ceremonies mark the slow passage of time. Every gesture, from the folding of the napkin to the turning of the teapots, performed with delicate care, as if to disturb the air too quickly would be a breach of etiquette. The tea is bitter, the silence long, and yet, within this carefully cultivated boredom, there is comfort, predictability, a life that drifts forward like the steady ripple of a koi pond, untouched by wind. Beyond the palace walls, the ashigaru trudge through the mud. The ninja dart, unseen through forests and alleys. Here, inside, life is wrapped in silk, bound by layers of ritual. There is no hunger, no screaming of battlefields, but nor is there freedom. For the Tokugawa elite are trapped, too trapped, in expectation, in ceremony, in a web of obligations that extend far beyond the walls of their chambers. Even moments of leisure are shaped by unspoken rules. Poetry must be composed with appropriate melancholy. Artworks must reflect the proper balance of emptiness and form. Conversations must weave carefully between admiration and modesty. In this world, even joy is tempered. Even sorrow is wrapped in lace-like restraint. The castle gates rarely open. The high walls loom, as much to keep others out as to keep those within from straying too far from their place. The steady repetition of this life lulls the days into a soft blur. Season follows season, cherry blossoms falling in the spring, cicadas humming in the summer, maple leaves burning briefly in the autumn air. And through it all, the Tokugawa elite move with quiet, measured steps, bound not by chains, but by tradition, surrounded by beauty, but at a distance from freedom. As you walk with them now, the soft whisper of silk brushing against the polished floor, you may begin to feel the slow rhythm of their world settling around you. It is a life that drifts, a life that repeats, a life that hums quietly beneath the weight of its own stillness. And as we gently step away from these hushed chambers, we can begin to look back upon the winding paths we have followed, from the mud-soaked march of the ashigaru to the daring rise and sudden fall of Oda Nobunaga, to the shadowed footsteps of the ninja, and finally to the slow, silken days of the Tokugawa elite. Each life different, each rhythm distinct, and yet all bound by the soft, steady pulse of history's long, unfolding story.